Hey everybody, this is Sean. I wanted to create this video to tell you a little bit about my background and my story as to how I ended up living this type of digital nomad slash traveler lifestyle, in hopes that maybe it can inspire some of you who feel stuck, maybe in a job that you don't like, or in a lifestyle situation that you don't like, or you just feel terribly uninspired. In the same way that I did 5 years ago, when I was very depressed at a job that I hated, and just felt generally stuck in life and disillusioned, lost. And I ended up going through pretty much a breakdown when I eventually decided to drop everything and leave the country and move to Bali for 6 months. And that 6 months turned into 5 years of traveling to different surf towns around the world and eventually settling back here in Bali. So I hope that this little story of mine can maybe shed a little bit of insight if you are in a situation similar to mine 5 years ago, when I felt like I was basically in a spot that seemed unescapable and I didn't know what to do. And I thought I was going to go crazy if I didn't change my life situation. So it basically all started in 2008 when I got a job, and it was a really great job, to be fair. And it was a great opportunity, and it paid really well. And in the eyes of, I guess, a normal LA person, it was success on a lot of measures. It had a very prestigious title. It was at a great university. And it could afford you a really great lifestyle in LA. And having grown up in LA, I was accustomed to having those types of things as a measure of one's worth and one's success. But interestingly, about probably the first week or two after getting that job, I started getting panic attacks, and I didn't even know what they were at the time. And I think the panic attacks resulted from the fact that I really didn't even want the job. Well, I wanted it on the level that I needed to be employed, I had bills to pay, and I wanted to be approved of in the eyes of my parents, my peers, etc. But as far as the duties were concerned, it just wasn't me. It didn't resonate with my heart. It just wasn't what I wanted to do. So I started getting panic attacks, and I didn't even know what they were. As I mentioned, I just suddenly started getting shortness of breath, and I attributed it to the smog levels in downtown Los Angeles, because my office was next to a freeway. I also moved next to my work, which was also next to a freeway in my apartment. And then one day it became really bad. One day I felt like I was gonna pass out if I didn't get a full breath. So I ran to the bathroom and I locked myself into one of the stalls, and I just kind of tried to regain my breath. It got to the point where I was in such panic and I didn't know what to do, so I ended up calling my brother. And thankfully my brother was available, and he came and he took me to the emergency room. And then when I got to the emergency room, the nurses said, you know what, we're going to test your lung capacity. They tested it. It checked out completely 100% fine. They said I had 100% lung capacity. There's nothing wrong with me. And they told me I was suffering from anxiety. And that was the first time I'd ever heard something like that. I always thought of myself as pretty well adjusted. You know, I thought I had my shit together. And the last thing definitely I could have figured was that there was something wrong with me emotionally or psychologically. So I didn't really believe them. I thought, yeah, right, I'm away from the freeway now, so I'm probably just able to take a full breath, and that's probably why I'm checking out as 100% in terms of my lung capacity. So anyway, I went back to my job, and I still continued to experience the shortness of breath. I tried all sorts of things to deal with it, such as getting plants in my room, closing down all of the air vents in my apartment, the plants were to try and cleanse the air. Eventually I moved away from that neighborhood and into a neighborhood with lots of trees, a little bit more natural environment away from the freeway, and the shortness of breath eventually went away. But after about 6 years at that job, just the stresses of being at a job that didn't resonate with me, kind of denying the things that I wanted in life, all of that really just started to mount up. And coincidentally, I ended up moving with my ex-girlfriend into an apartment again next to a freeway, and the shortness of breath returned. I'm not sure at this time if it had anything to do with the freeway or just the fact that it was just reaching a terrible boiling point. But the stresses of work, the shortness of breath, my depression that was resulting from being in a situation that I was super unhappy about, it just got to a point where I couldn't handle it anymore, and I thought I was just gonna completely crack. So at that point, I told my ex-girlfriend that I was gonna quit my job, and that eventually led to us breaking up, because in her mind, I was no longer living up to the dreams that we had of buying a house, starting a family, being successful, etc., etc. In fact, the dream in my mind, for what felt like it resonated with me, was to go travel the world, experience different cultures, learn different languages, and just basically be free of this constraint that I felt that I had put on myself in order to live up to a standard that I felt would make me feel like a successful person in the eyes of my society and the people that I cared about. So anyway, we eventually broke up. I put in my resignation at work, and 6 months later, I traveled to Bali. And that basically began for me a journey of introspection, because I began to wonder why I had been so depressed my entire life. Basically, the job was not the first time I was depressed. I had been suffering depression pretty much my entire life. It just really it reached a boiling point, as I mentioned, at that job, and it also started resulting in panic attacks. I had never had panic attacks in the past. So I started also going to therapy and really trying to figure out what the heck was going on with me. And as a child, the way that I dealt with that, this feeling of being lost, this feeling of depressed, as a child, I delved into hallucinogenic drugs, and I was really kind of just trying to understand my mind. But in this period, when I started traveling long term, I was doing it with the help of a therapist, and I was doing some meditation and really just doing a lot of introspection. And at that point, I discovered that I had suffered from some trauma as a child, and a trauma that went on for years, that created a lot of turmoil within me. In fact, I was diagnosed by 4 different psychologists or 4 different therapists. Some were psychologists, some were clinical social workers, with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. In other words, that results from trauma that is unresolved. And so in the past 5 years, I've been trying to resolve that trauma through many different natural methods, healthy methods, and meditation is primarily one of them that I credit like a lot of my healing to. So I wanted to let you all know that like my social media moving forward will deal a lot with that. I would like to kind of reveal a lot of the methods that I use to keep me healthy. I really went from a point of breakdown where I was severely depressed, anxious, suffering from panic attacks, to a point now where I feel very good in my own skin, and just I feel like a peaceful person. And so I'm very passionate about kind of the wellness practices that I've been using in the past couple years, and I want to share that with everybody. So that's what my channels are going to be about. They're going to be about wellness, they're going to be about finding inner peace, and they're going to be about self-expression. I feel that living a location and time independent life where you can basically live where you want, set your own schedule, is such a great way for each individual, or at least myself and several of my friends in this community, to really find a way to express yourself. What better way to express yourself when you have time and location freedom? So thank you guys, and thank you for following me along on this journey. And this is just a heads up of what the content will be like moving forward. I appreciate that. Bye-bye.